go. Go with the yo-so. Yo-so Bhagava Arahang Sama Sambuddho Sawakato Yena Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipanno Yassa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Tamayang Bhagavantang Sadamang Sasangang Imehi Sakarehi Atarahang Aropite Hiabhipujayama Sadhuno Bante Bhagava Suchira Parinipotopi Pachima Janata Nukampamanasa Ime Sakare Dugata Panakala Bhute Patikan Hatu Amhakang Dikharatang Hitaya Sukhaya Alahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vijja Charana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhammasarati Sata Deva Manu Sanang Buddha Bhagava Tamahang Bhagavantang Abhipujayami Tamahang Bhagavantang Sirasa Namami Suwakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditthiko Akaliko Ehipassiko Opanayiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhi Tamahang Dhammang Abhipujayami Tamahang Dhammang Sirasa Namami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujjupatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yaya Patipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Samichi Patipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Yadidang Chatari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutarang Punyaketang Lokasa Tamahang Sangang Abhipujayami Tamahang Sangang Sirasa Namami. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being free from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So now we have the questions. Oh, it's very nice to see you, very meditation. Has to say that because I'm his boss. No, he's a good monk. Okay, so let people come and sit down, get comfortable. Yep. Finding a nice seat somewhere. Okay. Here we go. Okie dokie. Here we go. The first question. If the nimita isn't seen as a light, how is it experienced? What is it like? What other differences are there? And I did mention that the nimita is actually always the same experience, but it's how we experience it, just how we perceive it is what changes. So sometimes, most times, it's easiest to see or to experience as a light, but sometimes people do experience it even as like a smell. Because that always was interesting me, that sometimes that people sitting here and they get really, really peaceful and have a very nice deep meditation, and their body starts to disappear, and they smell these fragrances which actually aren't in the room at all. You know, it could be like jasmine or sort of rose or something. And there was always, what's happening? And because, there are such things in existence as devas, I don't want to go into explaining or arguing why, sometimes I thought it may be like heavenly beings coming into the room. It's just very, very fragrant smelling beings. But after a while, because I don't get those nimittas, the fragrance nimittas, but after a while, you realize, this is just how they're experiencing these nimittas. But the same thing they're experiencing, their mind, but they're perceiving it as a fragrance rather than the light. And sometimes it is true that sometimes people do experience the nimitta as a physical experience. It's not a physical experience, you're not feeling it on your body. It's actually something which is very similar, but more intense, a very beautiful feeling. But the things they always have in common, I never actually met anybody who experiences the nimitta as a beautiful taste, especially in the evenings when I'm not supposed to talk about such things. But the other things, yes, not like and even sometimes sounds as well. Sometimes people say they meditate really deeply and they can almost hear the chanting, really heavily chanting. And something which is like out of this world, incredibly beautiful. And all it really is they're not hearing anything at all, but it's how the mind perceives sort of the nimitta. It's just what you add on to it. And it's the same with whatever color that light happens to be. It doesn't really matter. Any color is fine, and sometimes you have your favorite colors. But what is important, whether it's a light, that the color is very gorgeous and very beautiful, and quite intense and very clear and strong. If it's a fragrance nimitta, and again, you're not doubting it, it's just really amazing, it's beautiful, it's so it's more jasmine-y than jasmine, if jasmine you like that scent. And again, if it's a sound, it's just nothing you can hear with your ears in the real world. but even more beautiful. But of all of those nimittas, I mean, the best one is always going to be the lights. And they're usually the most common, simply because that we are more visual beings than anything else. You know, we use our sense of sight throughout the day more than anything else. So that's one of the reasons why that we see this incredible, beautiful thing. How do we interpret it? What language do we do? We usually see it as a beautiful light. And that's usually how it's described in most of the texts. But if it's something really extraordinarily beautiful, like an amazing sound or incredible fragrance, or a feeling, and it's not in your body, but it's like a bodily feeling, then that could be a nimitta. Dear Ajahn, how do you press the big letting go button? Is it through nibbida? Thanks. Nibbida is when you start to not be interested, in all the other things in life. That's why sometimes, you may be, a successful person in life, a rich person. You've been there, done that, and just, so what? Or you may be what was this story? That one of the monks who was with me over in Thailand years ago, he was English, and he went to one of the English public schools. And he said one of his friends in that school was a champion runner, long distance. And every race, this young man entered, he was always winning every one, a long distance runner. And people thought, he's going to go on to represent UK and maybe the Olympic Games. He's brilliant. And when he was about 15 or 16, this runner just lost his first race. And he gave up after that. He said, why? He said, for the first time in my life, I realized I did not need to win. There's a very simple insight like that. He'd been really killing himself. He had to win at all costs, and it was torturing his poor old body. And one day, what am I doing this for? I don't have to. And that was it. He stopped. And I always remember that, because sometimes all the stuff which we do in life, where's that question again, so I remember it? The letting go button. Sometimes we think, what am I doing that for? You get insight, and the insight usually turns you away from that. I don't want to do that anymore. And the little button, why do you want to live in a competitive world? Just even trying to get on in your company or in your life to get the next promotion. Why? I know this is a bit challenging for many people, but the higher you get up the corporate ladder, the more you have to work, the more stress you have, the more that people are sometimes trying to get rid of you so they can get up the corporate ladder. And so after a while, you say, what am I doing this for? That I'm contributing enough, the money's good enough, this is good enough for me. And so sometimes the boss invites you in and said, I think we've got a new job, would you like to take it? You say, no, thank you. I'm enjoying the job I've got now. Now, would you, if your boss offered you promotion, would you take it? If your boss offered you promotion, then on Metaji, would you take it? Yeah, that's the right answer. Okay. You'd be well trained. So that's a nibbida, and that's you let go of desire and craving. What more do you want? So sometimes you've been on this retreat center 4 or 5 days now, I forget the number, and is this retreat center good enough for you? What more would you want? You can always improve things, but then that's good enough. And when it's good enough, it means you can relax and rest. It's a wonderful thing when you're responsible for the place. You look at the place, look at everything. Well, yeah, there's a couple of light bulbs need replacing. Just maybe there's dust on the windows or something. And that's good enough, though. You have this wonderful sense of being easily satisfied. So you can let things be. Let all this wanting to change things go. When you press the letting go button, big time, oh yeah, it's so peaceful. And you stay with that peace, and the peace just grows and you go inside of it. So that's how you press the letting go button. The other way, I haven't told this tomorrow morning. I wasn't going to talk about tomorrow morning, I was going to talk about insight tomorrow morning. But anyway, maybe. There's one of those similes which I haven't mentioned yet, and it's a very key simile. It's of the 1,000-petal lotus simile. And I've mentioned it, so I have to start talking about it now, in maybe 5 or 10 minutes, try and be quick with it. That a lotus is a great symbol of Buddhism, and a lotus is closed up at night time. And if you look at the outermost sheath, the outermost petal, if you want to call it that, of the lotus, it's not very beautiful. It's actually corrugated, and it catches all the dust and dirt, protecting what's inside during the night time. And early in the morning, when the sun comes up, when the light and the warmth of the sun hit the outermost petal, it opens up slowly, and it reveals what's inside, the first layer of real petals. And that allows those petals to receive the light and warmth of the sun, so they open up. And the next layer of petals can now receive the light and the warmth of the sun, so they open up. And that's how a lotus opens up, layer by layer, receiving the warmth and light of the sun. And the deeper you go into that lotus, the more beautiful and fragrant and what's it called, like profound, not profound, but they're thinner and just more beautiful, more subtle are those petals of the lotus. And of course that simile, many of you have heard it before, it's one of my favorite ones. The lotus is you. And the outermost surface of you, is quite corrugated and dirty, grey, no fragrance. It's why you have to wash every day. And that's a human being, and sometimes you see some human beings, there's no chance there's anything beautiful inside of that. But that's one of the reasons why you go into probably prisons is one of the places where you don't expect such beauty inside a human being. You look at the outermost petals and they're rough and tattooed and dirty. But the light and the warmth of the sun, the light represents mindfulness and the warmth, kindness. And the two have to go together. Just light without kindness or kindness without mindfulness, it doesn't really work. So the two together, mindfulness and kindness, on you, it opens you out. You can feel this body, as I keep saying, and you relax it so much. It's so at ease. I shine my mindfulness and kindness on my body when I start meditating, until my body it literally does tingle sometimes, and it's very, very pleasant. And that allows me, once it's pleasant, allows me to allow it to disappear. It's letting it go. So you don't press the letting go button, let it be. That's just a brief description. You practice a mindfulness and kindness, and then things vanish, the letting go happens. And then a mindfulness and kindness to my emotional world. As I said at the very beginning, I look at my peaceometer. How peaceful are you just now, Ajahn Brahm? Are you tired? Are you excited? Now, what's your mind like? And then I just give that peaceometer mindfulness and kindness, and it relaxes. And it relaxes, you can feel it. You know what peace feels like inside, and you know just how to bring that level of peace into a deeper, stronger level. And then you just, after that, you start present moment awareness. You're aware of what we mean by present moment, and you use the kindness to get that present moment. And it's a strange thing to say, but in order to let go of the past, it's really helpful to be kind to it. Be kind to all those people who may have hurt you. Be kind to yourself, all the bad things you've done. To learn that forgiveness, which I mentioned this morning, done something wrong, give yourself 50 strokes of the cat. And if it's really wrong, 100 strokes. There. And because we don't have cats in this monastery, it's 50 strokes of The teddy bear. Where's my teddy bear gone? There we go. 1, 2. When you learn that kindness, things start to get really soft and easy. And it's easy to let go of the past once you've softened it with kindness. Don't blame people. I don't know why they did that or why I did that. Maybe thought it was a good idea at the time, but maybe it wasn't. And then the same with the future. You're kind to the future. Don't just say, "Oh, this terrible thing's going to happen." Be kind to it. Well, whichever way it happens, you can be compassionate to yourself and compassionate to the future. So the future's not so scary. And so when you are kind and soften the past and the future, it's so easy to let it go. And then you're kind to the present moment. It may not be the best present moment you've ever experienced in your life, but it's good enough. That kindness, the door of my heart's open to you no matter who you are. Present moment. Come in. And this present moment softens. It's easy to stay there. Another layer of petals has opened up in the present moment now. And then silence. I'm sure you've experienced many moments of silence. When you're kind and just aware, all those questions, they vanish. That's what I discovered with that monk, Ajahn, when I went to visit him. And I mentioned the story before to you. All these important questions I had as a monk, and I would only have this one opportunity to ask these questions from this great monk. And as soon as I went into his presence, all those questions, they totally vanished. Because he was zapping me with kindness, and you felt so accepted. You didn't have to be wise to be accepted. I could be as stupid as anything, and he would love me. I didn't need any questions. I didn't need to be enlightened. I didn't need anything. I didn't need to change. I was totally at ease, because he was giving that very powerful kindness, which embraced me as I was. And of course I never remember that. So when you're kind to this moment, you're aware of it and kind to it, it's amazing just how much of that commentary just vanishes. All by itself. You don't answer the questions. As you know, there's no end to questions. We end them for the evening, but then again, just as more questions come tomorrow, the next time we do a retreat. Except when you're kind to yourself, you feel so at peace. Just don't need questions because you don't need answers. You're happy as you are. And then you get into the silence, and then you're just kind, and then your breath comes up. And I say this is amazing, but the breath comes to you. It's the only thing left moving. And then you're kind to the breath. You're aware of it and kind to it. You don't try and control it. It's your friend. And I've had so much wonderful experiences with my breath over all those years I've been meditating. So my breath, when I see my breath and the breath notices me, yay, let's hang out together, let's chill out together, let's have a wonderful time together. That's the sort of thing which you do. And you don't have to hold the breath. It's like the breath's holding you. We hang out together. And that means it's so easy to watch the breath, and that becomes so very peaceful. You're going deeper into your lotus. And then, as you're aware and kind to this breath, you see the whole of the breath. It doesn't hide anything from you. It's like totally opening up to you. And then, of course, it gets very, very delightful. And even this beautiful, delightful breath, and you just, that's the lotus is really opening up now to some of the most beautiful, fragrant layers of petals. And then this is a wonderful part of the simile, because I've used this many times. When people get stuck, they're watching the breath, and it's delightful, but then sometimes they get a nimita comes up, but they can't sustain the nimita. They should go back to the delightful breath. And just let the mind decide. It's like the lotus is opening up, but it's not fully open yet. So you can see the nimita inside, we can see the delightful breath. What should I do? Just be mindful and kind. It's basically doing nothing. That's called letting things be, with kindness and awareness. And of course, then the nimita comes up. Oh, wow, beautiful. But you're kind to the nimita, not excited. Just like the simile which I said about the animals coming out from the forest, Ajahn, still forest pool simile. As they're coming up, be kind to them. These little animals, they're coming out to have some water to drink and maybe bathe and play around with their little cubs. And they're gorgeous to watch. But, being kind to them doesn't mean going up to them and stroking them. That actually sometimes terrifies some animals. So you're kind enough to them just to watch from a distance and let them play. Let them be wild tigers or whatever they are. And that's the kindness you give to them and the awareness. And so these nimittas, they just stay. And of course, then you go into those nimittas, get enveloped by them, get into the jhanas. And you just, again, kindness and awareness is what takes you in. So that's how to let things be. This beautiful kindness and awareness. You don't want to change anybody. Certainly not yourself. Be kind to yourself, compassionate to yourself, and aware. That's all. So simple. So that is the simile of the 1,000-petal lotus. And it's one of my favorites. I find the more I meditate or receive peace, the more old emotions surface. I find I can shut these down quicker without trying. It's an old pattern. Can you tell about staying open and how to do that, to let the emotions flow? Again, I think that simile of the 1,000-petal lotus explained that. If they come up, be aware of them. For some reason they want to come up, and be kind to them. Thank you. Really rotten memory. Thank you for coming to visit me for some reason or another. You need to come up, so welcome. Like the anger-eating monster, when you're kind to it, what was really a terrible emotion at first becomes a nice one, because of the way you look at it. So that's one of the reasons why any trauma you've had, just let it come up, if you feel ready for it, and use a lot of kindness. Please let me know if I told in public the story of assets. That's the Australian Society of Survivors of Torture and Trauma. I told that to somebody, I think, in the interviews, but I didn't tell it here? Okay. This was a very moving story personally, because we had a few of the people who come to our Nolamara Centre, psychologists and psychiatrists, and they invited me to their little organisation called Assets. And I didn't know why until they told me that so much of what works in their organisation actually got from me coming to Nolamara Centre on a Friday night. I said, actually, who are you? What is Assets? And it was recognising that Australia is a wealthy country and has some kindness to allow refugees to come into this country. And some of the refugees and people who come here, they've been through real, big-time hell. Please excuse the language, multiple rapes, beatings, torture. And when you hear what some people have been through, you wonder how they could have survived and lived. And you also just are very sad at just how one human being can treat another human being. But, that's another problem. But the problem you have right in front of you is this person is in Australia. Physically they're free and physically they're safe. But emotionally they're traumatized. So a lot of times they may be asleep at night, or they may be just walking down the street and something just reminds them of just this horrendous pain and torture which they've been through. This real stuff. And so this organisation tries to not just free their body, but free their mind. To work with the trauma, and these are extreme traumas. And one of the things which they use there, and I couldn't believe they'd adapted this, but I was so, if anything, so pleased, not proud so much as pleased that this stuff which you teach is actually working big time. And they said, it was the opening of the door of your heart simile, which was one of their most successful therapies. They taught this first of all, explained it, and then one of their clients, the refugees, thought they were ready. They had to feel really safe, and always someone around in case they needed a bit of assistance, because they were going to literally reconnect with their torture or their multiple rape. And how they did it was just sitting down either in a chair or on the floor like you are, and then just to imagine this little Valentine's Day heart in the center of your chest. Not a real heart, because the real heart is just too complicated and it's just too hard to imagine. This little pipes coming all over the place out of it. You don't know which one's which and it's in the right place or not, but Valentine's heart is very easy to visualize. On the Valentine's Day heart, you imagine two doors, like the two doors behind me. Or just a double door, any old double door will do. And you imagine those double doors opening up. And inside your heart, that's you, the part of you you're very comfortable with. The part of you you like and at ease with. The part of life which you live with every day. But outside your heart, on the floor, in the cold, usually make it something like hard, like concrete, cold, windy, damp, really unpleasant outside. You see these little girls, or if you're a male or a little boy, who was beaten so hard for no reason, who was tortured, abused. You see them outside, and they've been outside for a long time. And that's you. That's part of you, part of who you are. And you imagine this little staircase coming down. And the staircase goes down to the concrete outside. And then you call, if you're ready, you call that little girl who was so badly beaten and abused. Come up. Come inside my heart. Don't stay outside any longer. And it's really tough for both of you. The one inside and the one outside. But little by little you encourage them to come up. When they come out to the final rung of the stairs, you can hold them. Come inside. I don't want to pretend you didn't happen. I don't want to get angry at you because you're me. You're who I am. Come inside. And there is that catharsis happens. Instead of being ashamed, embarrassed, stigmatized, afraid, you embrace with kindness that part of your past which was just so unpleasant. You embrace it, and the problem is just about solved. And I have to end up by saying that many of those people, because they said that came from Ajahn Brahm and from Dharmaloka Center, they come and visit and listen to the Friday night talks. And I will never forget, just after one Friday night talk, one of those victims of trauma, they came to the talk, and afterwards they were just chatting with another, just a regular visitor, this young man. And the young man was listening to her describe what had occurred to her. And she could actually describe it just peacefully. It was weird. What happened to her and how it was done and stuff. And the man who was listening was just shocked. That's a terrible thing which happened to you. And then she turned on him and said, "You've no right to say that. This is who I am. This is me. I'm not going to stigmatize this ever again or allow other people to stigmatize it. This is who I am, and I'm at peace with it now." And that really impressed me. The lady was not messing around or just trying to hide anything. She was a real, saint. She'd come to terms with what had happened. It was who she was, and she wasn't afraid to talk about it and help others. She knew how it felt. And she was free. And that was really, really impressive. And I just think, wow, that little story went so far. And that was extreme trauma. So all the stuff which, you say, I find I can shut these down quickly without trying, but they'll come up again if you keep trying to shut them down. I understand them by letting them come up. It's your history, who you are. And once you embrace them and are kind to them, then they disappear. You've got to be kind to them first of all. The kindness is amazing. So you open the door of heart to all the things which happen to you. Most of them aren't your fault. Some of them, actually, be honest, were. You hurt other people. But most of the time, you've done the right thing. So, but whatever it is, it's you. Love it and learn from it. Anyway, so sorry for a long time on that one, but that was really moving to me. Can you enter samadhi, jhana, via moving meditation, such as walking, yoga, or tai chi, only in sitting meditation? It's usually only in sitting meditation. That's what I always thought. But one of the monks I knew said he saw one monk in Thailand who had all his bumps and cuts on his head. It was funny, but it was true. So he had really strong meditation, and sometimes during walking meditation he got into a jhana. But when you're in a jhana, you've got no mindfulness of your body, of touch, of sight, of sound, of smell, or taste. You're perfectly aware inside. All your mindfulness is inside and not outside. So imagine that all your 5 senses are shut down, your 6th sense is just blissing out. You're going to hit the wall. You're going to hit your toes and fall over things. So it's not a good idea to enter jhana while you're walking or doing tai chi. You get stuck. You don't know what to do next because the body can't feel anything. So that's usually what happens. If you do start to get some nice deep meditation, you feel you're losing awareness of your body, then just sit down. You can always sit down anywhere. Once you sit down, then the momentum of the meditation will continue on. It will take you into the deep meditations. Remember, that's a classic description of the jhanas, that the sense of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Those 5 senses stop. And somebody reminded me just one of those stories of them stopping. Reminded me in interview time. And it's written, in depth in one of my books. Was of this guy who, one of the meditators in Perth, and he'd usually just meditate half an hour, 40 minutes or something. On a Sunday afternoon, he told his wife, he's bored with what's on TV, he's going to go into his room to meditate. So he went into the bedroom. After about an hour, he hadn't come out of the bedroom, so his wife checked up on him. And when she went to the bedroom and just saw him, he was still meditating. He was really still. Very still. Too still. She couldn't notice he was breathing. It looked like he stopped breathing. And she freaked out. Understandably, she called 000, which is the emergency number, as you know. And the ambulance came pretty quickly. It was a Sunday afternoon. So the ambulance, came up just really loud, sirens, howling, and there's a trained medics, came in the bedroom, took one look at him, sort of realized his breath wasn't coming in and out at all, that he couldn't feel any pulse. So they put him in back of the ambulance and just rushed him to Charlie Gardner's. It was Charlie Gardner's he went to. And that his wife was freaking out. And when they went to the hospital, it's quite a few years ago now, the doctor on duty, it was an emergency, his parents had migrated from India. But he was basically educated in school and high school, university here in Australia, in Perth. when he saw this guy, he put on an ECG and EEG, see if there's any heartbeats around, and there was flat lines. Not just the ECG, but the EEG as well. He flatlined. And so in those days, they put on these defibrillators, these electric shocks. And I've seen them in documentaries, and they just really quite a strong current to try and get your heart going again. And sometimes it makes you lift off the table. So quite violent. But nothing worked. He was still just flatlining. And the only reason why the doctor continued using the defibrillators was the doctor, because his parents were from India, they'd heard that some yogis can suspend their life signs. And he thought, well, maybe the wife said he was meditating beforehand, maybe that's what he had done. And the other difference, which is, it's important to know this, that the difference between being dead and being in jhana, one of those, is that your body is still warm. You still have that heat. And that's exactly how the Buddha said in the suttas. If somebody's sitting really perfectly still and you can't feel any heartbeat, there's no sort of breath going in and out, and even you have an EEG and find out if their brain is operating and it's not, if the body is still warm, that's a sign they're in the deep meditations. So anyway, the doctor kept on the defibrillators, and then just the man came out of his meditation. And he described the experience to me sort of later on. When you have this experience, I've got to tell Ajahn Brahm about this. And he told me the next weekend, and he said that why did you come out? And he said, I felt it was the time to come out now. Nothing to do with defibrillators. He just, meditation's over. So came out, opened his eyes, and where am I? I was in my bedroom. How did it come here? And one of the reasons I tell that story was he had no perception of the sound of ambulances, no experience of the physical feeling of being lifted up into the ambulance, put on the, the gurney or whatever, the table. Not even any feelings of defibrillators going through his body. He was just so blissed out inside. It wasn't unconscious, he said it was inside his mind. Having a wonderful time, the best time of his life. And the doctor, because he'd flatlined for such a long time, gave him a thorough examination and couldn't find anything wrong with him at all. And the doctor had no choice. He can go home. So he walked home with his wife. He didn't live that far away. And he said, I asked him, what happened when you were inside that meditation? I said, well, wonderful, the best time, the best bliss of my life. And he said, was it a really pleasant experience? Well, there's one bad thing about the experience. So what was that? He said, the scolding I got from my wife on the way home. Don't you ever do that again. I was so scared of, you're dead. He said that was the unpleasant part of it. But I tell that story, and again, absolutely accurate and true, and it's in one of my books, because number one, you don't have to be afraid. You're almost invulnerable. And number two, this is what happens. That's a sign of the jhanas. Your five senses are turned off, and you're having a wonderful time. You're not floating out of the body. That's another experience. You're just deep inside, just the sixth sense, the mind, having a beautiful time. So anyway. Next question. I'm not interested in my past life. We live in the present moment. I don't see the value in knowing this. How do we avoid past life from appearing in deep meditation? A lot of times, if you don't ask for it, you don't want it, you don't get it. So the very fact is that you're very peaceful, very delighted, and just having a wonderful time. So just enjoy that. And there's so many other insights you can get afterwards, after you emerge from those deep meditations, because the five hindrances, which distort perception, are gone. You can think clearly, you can see clearly, you can taste clearly, you're not afraid of anything. Even my preceptor, I always thought that he was just a study monk. He was a brilliant scholar in Wat Saket in Thailand, but because I was a meditator and he ordained me, We shared a lot together, and one of the things he told me, I never heard anywhere else, was that, when he was a young monk, he actually grew up in Koh Samui in southern Thailand, and it's more like south-east Thailand. But anyway, in Koh Samui, that his teacher taught him some meditation, and so he did his meditation in the coconut grove. He said one day he had a very deep, peaceful meditation, and when he came out of meditation, he saw there's a snake crawled up in his lap. And it was a very, very dangerous snake, a venomous snake. He said he couldn't believe his response to that snake. He saw it in his lap, crawled up, and just one bite and he'd be dead. And he was just so happy, so easy to give it loving kindness. You can stare as long as you like, snake. And he was just so peaceful with it. Not even a little bit of fear. He didn't need to suppress anything. Just carried on a bit of meditation because there was no fear at all. And I was surprised because he grew up there. He was taught to be afraid of that type of snake, but there's no fear at all. And after about 10, 15, 20 minutes or so, the snake got up and just gently crawled away. And then he could get up. He said he noticed when you have deep meditation, you don't have any fear at all. And it also meant that not just fear of snakes, but fear of seeing things which challenge what you thought of as truth before. You see things clearly. So sometimes, if a past life memory is important to you, you can actually access it. But one of the reasons why, it can be important, because so many people in this world, they believe only in one life. Just almost in denial to the huge amount of evidence of rebirth, reincarnation. And so that, if you're just interested, that's a great way of finding out whether you existed before or not. And again, if you get those memories in meditation, you have no doubt at all, ever again, or maybe in your next life, I'm not sure, but not in this life, that you lived before and you're going to live afterwards. It takes away a lot of the fear of death. Because, that's okay. This is life. You're not so afraid. Because, death is not the end of everything. So anyway, if you want to, but if you don't want to, it probably won't happen. And if it does happen at the end of deep meditation, you're not afraid at all because you're fearless. Okay, another question here. Past life. You mentioned meditation can assist with delving into your past life, but does it also provide insight and or premonitions about future events or karma ripening? Not really, because the future is always uncertain, because the future is work in action. So it doesn't really give you any much information, especially not certain information about what's going to happen in the future. All you know is you can understand, if you remember many past lives, understanding how karma works. Why did I get reborn in this place and not another place? Insights into, if you're in the sort of a hell realm or a lower realm, you can walk out anytime you like. So you understand what punishment is and just why we punish ourselves. And that's a very worst type of punishment. And you don't have to do that. You see, you've done that so many times before, you never want to do it again. So you actually learn from your mistakes. The insight you get from past life memories is you get a much wider picture of what life is. It's not just one life, so many lives. When you get that very broad picture, of course you get more information, more understanding of what this world is and what life is. And that really makes a big change to how you view things. Would you please explain how we can develop saddha? Saddha is like faith as a means of overcoming fear. It's faith or confidence overcoming fear. Sometimes, there's, I think, 3 things you can have faith in. Faith in your teacher. So check me out. Just go into my cave and just go under the cushions or men, see if there's something there which is not supposed to be there. And where I got my big confidence with Ajahn. And people say, do you think he was enlightened? And this was one of those experiences where I ticked a really big box. And that was, he would usually not let anyone go into his private quarters. And he had maybe just a attendant monk, but just one attendant monk for a long time, 6 months or a year. And then I was just at his hut in Wat Papong in Thailand. And then, it must have been 8 or 9 years, very close to before I came here to Perth. And then he asked me to get something from his room. And I just jumped at the opportunity. I was now, when Ajahn Chah was downstairs, having a private look at my teacher's room. I was really excited. I can really find out now if this is a real monk. And when I went out there, it was just almost like crying. It was just inspiration. There was hardly anything there in his room. There was one of the straw mats on the ground. Not a mattress, but these straw mats, we haven't got one around here to show you. Just made out of grass. And had a wooden pillow. Not a sort of unusual pillow, not even one of those tie-type pillows, which is like thick and got this lovely embroidery on the outside, but it's a wooden pillow. And I think there's a water bottle there and a couple of robes on the line, and that was it. And this was a monk who, the kings and queens would invite to the palace, and incredibly wealthy people and generals would come and visit and offer him whatever he wanted. And in his room there was nothing. Just a mat, wooden pillow. And not even I could sleep on one of those. And nothing there. And it was like the emptiness of his private quarters. That's what really impressed me. And the fact that he didn't need to have that, he could have whatever he wanted. Because there was so many powerful supporters. So anyway, and as soon as that, you get a lot of faith in him. So what he said, you can actually listen to with more depth and trust them. So you have faith in your teachers by checking them out for a long time. And number 2, you have faith in the Dhamma. These teachings actually work. So you do a bit more study, listen not just to one monk, but many monks, and find out the teachings. And you practice them. It's not intellectually arguing and understanding them, because some of those intellectual arguments, they don't make any sense. That's one of the things I remember from going to a place like Cambridge and studying such things like quantum theory, because it was just totally illogical when you first looked at it. It couldn't be the truth. But the experiments kept on confirming it. And there wasn't nothing wrong with the logic, it was just my mind wasn't wide enough to really comprehend it. And then after many years studying and getting used to it and allowing the mind to become wider, my mind was too narrow when I first went in there. And it became wide enough, and some of the things which I thought were irrational when I first studied theoretical physics, then it became, obviously it's true. And I've often used that, just the fact that the universe has only got a limited volume. It's not infinite, this universe, in size, but it has no boundaries. There's no boundaries to this universe, but it's not infinite. So what are you talking about? If it's limited in size, it has to have a boundary. Otherwise, it goes on forever. And of course, the simile which explains this is the simile of a ball, like a football or a basketball or something. The surface of that basketball is limited. It's not infinite area on the outside of that ball, but there is no boundaries to it. No edges. Just like planet Earth. It's got limited space, and you know that because we're just using it up very fast. But it's got no boundaries on it. People like to have boundaries. That's why you always, on maps, if the map is produced in the United States. You see, the United States is right in the middle. In Australia, you can't even see it. It's just around the back there, in the corner somewhere. And I always remember when I first came to Australia, I should have asked somebody if they asked me, do you want anything? I want that map, because I saw it, the real corrected map of the world, which actually looked like upside down, because it had Australia in the top centre. And because it put Australia in the top centre, it had to be sort of upside down, with like Perth and Sydney high up and Queensland down below. And it had all the other countries, on the edge somewhere. Why is Australia always on the edge somewhere? They said, no, this is a corrective, the right map of the world. And it's as accurate as any other map of the world, which you see. So it was just, why do we always want to be in the center of things? And even like China used to be called the Middle Kingdom, the Mediterranean Sea. And what is it, I think in Tolkien, Middle Earth. We always want to be in the center of things. And just like this planet Earth is so important, that many people thought the sun had to go around the Earth because the Earth was more important than the sun. So that idea of always being in the center of things is wrong. And when people got their idea you can go around the Earth, it's not in the center of things, when that idea comes in, you can understand just why this universe can be limited in size but without any boundaries. Just like planet Earth. That just means your perceptual framework has to expand. And that is sometimes why when you have faith in these teachings, you allow those teachings to expand your understanding of the nature of the mind and also of the body. And lastly, the most important saddha, faith, confidence, is in yourself, in your ability to become fully enlightened. The whole works. And I don't know why it is, again, I've mentioned this before, why sometimes people just don't believe they can do it. Of course you can. And the experiments which I did on that, somebody's heard all these stories before, was when I was a school teacher. And I was teaching, one of the things I was teaching in school, it was down in Devon in England, was mathematics. And the teachers told me there's this one boy in my class of mathematics was hopeless, came bottom of the class the year before. And again, being rebellious, but also being investigative, I decided, I chose that boy and I said, I'm going to give him extra attention. You've got 30 kids in that class, you can't give every kid the same attention, but really give him extra attention. After the class, go to his desk, do you understand that? Oh, this is the way to do it. And just, even during the class, when people are doing a problem, I go up to his desk, you get the idea, this is the way it gets done. And I gave him extra attention, extra praise, and it was amazing that he became top of the class at the end of my year as his teacher, and he was bottom before. And I did that because I had to prove to myself there's no such thing as someone who can't do maths or can't do English or can't do this. It's just they've thought they can't do it. And they've accepted that belief, which means they can't. So a lot of times the belief in yourself, you can do anything, frankly, when you're young. I don't think I can run the 100 meters in the Olympic Games and win gold for Australia. But the high jump, you just sit there and just levitate over the bar. Is that cheating? But anyhow, that's the saddha, the faith, the confidence in yourself. That's also, I'm going to be careful here because sometimes when people have things like cancers and they just believe that they're going to die, and of course their death is certain then almost, but then sometimes you start telling all the other stories which I've seen personally of cancers just vanishing. And people who are supposed to be dead are alive. That monk I said I went to visit, one of the reasons I got to know him and was really impressed with him, when I first got to Thailand, he was in Sirirat Hospital and looked after all the bills paid for by the King of Thailand. And they eventually said to him, "You're going to die. There's nothing more we can do." And so he said quite obviously, "I'd rather die in my monastery than die in Bangkok." So he got sent back to his monastery. It's on the Mekong River, outside of Sri Chiang Mai, in the northeast of Thailand, not the north of Thailand. Beautiful monastery. And then he went back there to die, and it took about 25 years to die. And that was really impressive. But sometimes the confidence people have, if you really believe this is possible, then doors open up. But this is just with your body, with your mind, to believe, yes, you can get into jhanas. And according to the Buddha, sometimes we say, Ajahn Brahm, you're just exaggerating. According to the Buddha, the only people who can't get into jhanas, who can't get enlightened, is if you've killed your mother or father. I don't mean just letting them die, just stabbed them, shot them or something. If you killed your mother and father, drew the blood from a Buddha, created a schism in the Sangha, abused a bhikkhuni, that's no sexual abuse. What else is there? Yes, about it, yeah. Any of you done it? Sorry? Oh yeah, if you've deliberately killed an enlightened being. Have any of you done that? Come on, confess. If you haven't, that means you can get enlightened. And people say, Ajahn Brahm, you exaggerated. No, I'm just repeating what the Buddha said. You can. I'm not saying you will. But it's open for you. And that's the faith. And you get that faith, and wow, let's do it. 2 questions. What's the difference between a vipassana and this retreat? Basically, truly nothing. You get lots of insight here. Lots of calm as well, the two go together. However, it's not a vipassana retreat, because a vipassana retreat is like a name for a particular type of practice. But you're doing vipassana here, you're getting calm here, you're growing a lot. Because also, one thing which vipassana retreats don't have much of, unfortunately, is kindness, compassion. It's one of the reasons why if somebody is sick or they sleep in because they were tired last night, I don't tell anybody off. So it's not so much control there. And I find that just in general, that's how the Buddha taught, and how Ajahn Chah taught. Anyway, in theory, can someone who doesn't live a Buddhist lifestyle still experience the nimitas and jhanas, or do the 8 precepts help you get there quicker? Yeah, the 8 precepts, they do. 8 precepts do help you get there quicker. Basically, the jhanas are the 8th factor of the Eightfold Path. And the first 7 factors of that Eightfold Path help you support the jhanas. So just the Eightfold Path, just faith, confidence. I just mentioned that. And the second factor, which is one which I always emphasize, sometimes it's called right thought. And I think you know by now, if you've been listening to me on this retreat, that thought is never right. It's actually quite disturbing. And so sometimes people call it right intention, but even that is not accurate. I prefer the word right motivation. It's where you're coming from, because it means motivations of letting go. Sometimes I call that making peace, of kindness, avayapada, and of gentleness, ahimsaka, being gentle to yourself. That third factor of the Eightfold Path, second factor of the Eightfold Path, third part, is gorgeous. Be gentle to yourself. And people know what ahimsaka means. because that was adopted by Mahatma Gandhi. Non-violence. This especially, non-violence to yourself. And sometimes people do violence to themselves when they're meditating. They sit through pain and just, the body is saying, look, don't do this. And I've told you those stories of that monk who was, I don't think I did tell you that story, but one of the monks, he decided to sit in meditation all night without moving. So in the evening he crossed his legs, no matter how much it hurts, he's not going to move. And in the morning we had to take him to the hospital. Double knee reconstruction. So why do you do that? So anyway, because he didn't really understand the Eightfold Path. Kindness and gentleness. It's not being soft, because kindness has power, opens up the lotus. And so you need the 7 factors of the Eightfold Path. And once, just before the Buddha passed away, this wanderer just asked this Buddha this wonderful question. He wasn't a Buddhist, but the Buddha was close to passing, going to Parinibbana. And they asked the Buddha, in other religions, can people get enlightened? Other traditions? And the Buddha gave this amazing answer. He said, in whatever tradition you find the Eightfold Path, there you will find people who get enlightened. So in other words, it wasn't what you call it, it's what you do. It's how you practice. Not if you call yourself a Buddhist, you don't practice the Eightfold Path. And unfortunately, there's many people who call themselves Buddhists who don't practice an Eightfold Path. And of course, if you don't call yourself a Buddhist, but still practicing that Eightfold Path, well, then you get enlightened. Just what happens when you practice a path. Hi Ajahn, occasionally when I meditate, I experience spinning. Is this a common meditation object, or do I have a low blood pressure? I don't know what blood pressure is. But it is true that meditation lowers your blood pressure. That's common knowledge. And I first found that out when I went to go give blood at the Red Cross in Perth years and years ago. I went with another guy who was actually, I think, a novice. And so he went to give blood too. And I was there, and then the nurse checked his blood pressure and he said there's something wrong. Because he'd given blood before, and when he was working as an executive in sort of a government agency. He said, your blood pressure's really gone down, what's wrong? And she took one look at him and saw his brown nose. Oh yeah, because you're a monk, you must be meditating. That explains it. I was laughing because I was really surprised to know that meditation was well known to lower your blood pressure. So it may be just because you're lowering your blood pressure, and that maybe it is a bit low, that maybe you are a little bit sort of spinning. But, it's not such a big thing. So you can just eat more. I don't know what creates higher blood pressure. Salt. Sorry? Soap. That covers it. Yeah, just worry a bit more. Sorry? Drink more water, fish and chips, yeah. People told me that I'm too soft. And so they told me, I said, okay, I'll eat more salt. Because salt is supposed to harden your arteries, so it must be hardening my heart as well. So I'm like, okay, sorry. Okay, yeah, so water and anything else which can increase yours, maybe get it tested. Do people who see their past lives get a sense of urgency in the practice or get psychologically disturbed? It's usually people who see their past life, they don't get urgency in the practice so much as urgency in letting go of stuff. Things which mean a lot to other people don't mean so much to them. And it's also, the urgency maybe is, you can't really say that because you're going to get another life. So if you don't make it this life, you have another one coming up. So what's the rush? You grow more in patience, in stillness. So it actually is an urgency, but not through willpower, through wisdom power. And psychologically disturbed, I must admit, I haven't seen anyone who remembers their past life get psychologically disturbed. Psychologically healed, yes. simply because they get the bigger picture, they get more knowledge and understanding. So they can let things go, understand why things happen. Sorry, Ajahn. No, you don't need to be sorry. Second question, but very brief. I promise when the retreat is finished, are we still able to visit the meditation hall at your monastery to meditate? If so, what restrictions are there? P.S. The frog peeing on the monk's rice still cracks me up. You know, strange enough, it didn't crack that monk up. He was very upset. And even though he was really hungry, he couldn't eat anymore. I can understand that. But yeah, that meditation hall is always open as long as people use it properly. And sometimes we have ceremonies there, like ordinations, or we have talks there. And so when there's the monks having a ceremony there, then just please don't go in. But if it's other times, which is most of the times, of course you're allowed to go in and enjoy. Ajahn, is someone with Jhana a better person? Should all Dhamma teachers have Jhana first before they teach others? They're likely to be a more powerful person. But you know one person who got Jhanas who was not a good person? Who was that? Devadatta, yeah. And that story. Because, you know, he was the cousin of the Buddha and was always, so his whole life and previous lives was almost like competition with the Buddha. And so towards the end of his life, he had good meditation, but sort of also had a lot of pride as well. And that pride made him into a person who just wanted to kill the Buddha, which is not a good quality at all. A very bad quality. But nevertheless, the Buddha said in a future life you'll get enlightened, because he still had all the amazing sort of abilities to get into deep meditation. So, but usually, those are only exceptions. Most people will get jhanas, obviously, because you have to have some of those Eightfold Path, and also it encourages you, where there is a weakness in your Eightfold Path, it will actually help you get insight. When the jhana is over, when you come out of the jhana, you're just so pure, and so powerful as well, and courageous. You can do so many wonderful things. So most Dhamma teachers who have jhanas are really beautiful people. Please explain the difference, if any, between jhanas and samadhi. Are they different stages of calm abiding? Thank you. Okay, someone concerned with terminology. The jhanas are always the explanation of samma samadhi, correct samadhi, pure samadhi, appropriate samadhi, if you like. So those are always the four jhanas, samma samadhi. You have a look in the suttas, and that's what they always translate. Samma samadhi is the four jhanas. Dear Ajahn, Buddha has used similes very effectively to teach Dhamma. Quote a few of them, and in what context they were used, etc. I'll just see if I can get one further simile of the importance of the jhanas. Oh no, okay. This was, because this also answered the question, did the Buddha use humor? It's not actually the Buddha here, but one of the Buddha's chief lay disciples, and his name was called Chitta, General Chitta. Chitta has two meanings. It either means sort of the mind, or it means beautiful. And it was a Sanskrit form of Chitta, was given to the town in the north of Malaysia, Chitra. So that was one of the princes of the Thai royal family came down there with an army and just conquered the place, and he named the town after himself, Chitra. And anyway, General Chitta, the householder, or he was a retired military man, because of his position, he was just an important person in the community. So when he became a Buddhist, that was just, people were really impressed. So one day, Chitta went to go and see the leader of the Jains, Mahavira he was called there, on Nyataputta. And there's an anomaly that two great religions, Buddhism and Jainism, their leaders were, in the same region of India, the Ganges Valley, at the same time. And so Chitta went to go and see the leader of the Jains, and he asked the leader of the leader of the Jains welcomed him and said, "Oh, here's one of the Buddha's famous disciples, lay disciple." And he asked the Chitta, he said, "We're just talking about this idea that you can stop thinking. What do you think? Do you believe that you can stop thought?" And Chitta said, "No, I don't believe you can stop thought." And the leader of the Jains was really delighted. "See, even one of the Buddha's chief disciples, well-known disciples, he knows you can't stop thought, thinking, no more than you can put your fist in the river Ganges to stop the current of the Ganges. It can't be done." And there you are, you've got one of the Buddha's chief disciples, General Chitta, who's a really, really wonderful person, says that is rubbish, you can't stop thought. And then Chitta smiled and said, "What I said is I don't believe you can stop thought, because I know you can, because I can get into the jhanas." And then the leader of Jain says, "These disciples of the Buddha are really tricky, sneaky. You can't have a proper conversation with them." And that was a little bit of humour. And that was just like a simile of trying to put your fist in the river Ganges. Anyway, there's many similes, but my brain is getting a bit tired. So what they were used sometimes to inspire and sometimes to explain deep teachings so ordinary people could understand them. And sometimes if you translate those similes just word for word, you can't really get that much meaning from them, because they use even implements which we don't use these days. So when I did a bit of translation, I always tried to take a simile and just change it in a way which was not changing its meaning, but just changing some of the words used. So, which is one of those? Do you remember any one of those where I changed the meaning changed the words without changing the meaning? Sorry? Oh yeah, okay, that's a good one, yeah. Thank you. Very smart, these nuns. So that's one of the similes which when I heard it, it was very powerful. The Buddha said if somebody, I think a band of robbers, they capture you and they cut off your limbs, your arms and your legs with a two-handed saw. And if you have just one thought of ill will towards those thieves, you're not a real disciple of mine. So could you do that? It's a pretty tough ask. But then again, two-handled saw, maybe you may have seen those. When I was translating, I said, if you see, if you get captured by terrorists and they cut off your limbs with a chainsaw, which is a bit more likely, then if you have one feeling of ill will towards your torturers, then you're not a disciple of mine. That is a little bit more interesting. So anyway, I now understand, I think, the Buddhist belief of a spiritual end, the flame going out upon death once enlightened. I hope I got this correct. My question is, where does the spirit begin? Thanks. The beginning of things and the end of things. Now that, the beginning of things, again, is one of those concepts which really concerns people. They think, how did this universe begin? How did life begin? Where did we all come from? And first of all, that assumes what I call flat time, like flat earth. Remember, I'm saying it this way because I already introduced this simile. The universe has got no boundaries but limited space. It's like curved, just like this earth is curved. So the earth has no boundaries. It has no beginning and end, planet Earth. But it's it's limited space. So the same with the universe. Limited volume, but no edges. Then you go to the next level, time. We always assume like flat time, like flat earth. So people really thought if you sail far enough on the oceans, you come to the edge and fall off. But we all know just how, it's an obvious idea where they thought that, but it was not informed. We know better because we've seen photos and pictures of the earth. We may have even gone around it. I remember once just teaching and getting a round the world ticket to teach. And first go to Europe, I first go to Singapore, Malaysia, and then over to Europe to give retreats and teach, and then from Europe over to Canada, and Canada down to America, and I think then back to Singapore and Australia to get home. It was around the world. And so we know now that's true. You can actually get around the world tickets. Not now, of course, because of COVID. But anyway, the same with this universe is curved, but we all thought it was flat. When you understand it's curved, it answers many questions. We still think that time is flat, has a beginning and end. What if time was also curved? Curved.
There's a little mouse.
A bug?
No.
Where?
Just like he ran underneath the door with it.
Oh, okay, you can go there. So anyway, when time is curved, it means it's no beginning or end. And I sort of imagine that in maybe 100, 200 years' time, people look back upon the times we thought the time was flat, had a beginning and an end. Having a beginning and end never makes any sense. If it had a beginning, what was before the beginning? Has an end, what happens after the end? But curved time is much more interesting. So where did human beings begin? What would happen after this world? This planet is no longer viable. Maybe we can get reborn in other planetary systems, which is true. Even the Buddha said there's many other planetary systems with life on it. There's only one little sutta somewhere, but I always remember that. I said, there's the Buddha confirming extraterrestrial. I know there's aliens. I confirm there's aliens. Well, once when I went to Heathrow, you could actually see the entry sign, like European citizens, UK citizens, and aliens. That proves it. But that's only joking. But no, the Buddha said, why not? But anyway, one time this whole universe will finish. When the universe finishes, then what happens? When there's no five senses to get reborn into, because the universe is not viable anymore, then automatically all of you will get reborn in the Jhana realms. Your mind will continue even after the universe ends. When another universe arises, then you can have bodies to get reborn into, basically. So you can keep being reborn in another universe, and then another one. So where did you start? Physically, we can say we evolved, but that's only the bodies. What about your mind? Where did that start? And some of those bodies those minds have been going wrong a long, long time. I love some of science, because some of science, it's a truth that some of the higher elements, even like things like iron in your body, the only way that iron can be produced in a universe is to have gone through 2 supernova at least. And a supernova is this huge explosion, a star exploding. And that just makes like a sort of an atomic explosion just look like just a snap. This is hugely powerful. And so you've got iron in your body, and that iron, the only way it could have come is it's been through 2 massive stellar explosions. So after the stellar explosion, just spreading so much dust and dust all over the universe, some of that dust collected in another star and that exploded. And that just went all over the universe as well, and some of it came into our solar system, came planet Earth, and you've got some of that stuff. So if you asked some of the iron in your body, where did you come from? What's your history? You could find that history. You'd find that twice it's been through this massive explosion. And it's really true. It's not just being like hippie talk. You are star stuff. Been through 2 stellar explosions. And sometimes that just bends my perceptions of the nature of this body, where it comes from. And if your atoms in your body could speak, that's what they would say. And that's just science truth. And I can't like that. Anyway, the last question, I'm getting tired. How best to subdue the ego when it arises in the mind? It doesn't arise in the mind, it's been there all the time. And sometimes it hides, and sometimes you can see it. But part of the ego is it owns stuff, which is one of the reasons that when you let go of stuff, it's like you're letting go of yourself. So, for example, when there's like a bushfire, people go back into their houses or their rooms to try and protect stuff and keep stuff, because that's almost who they are. It's such a personal ownership. They're willing to risk their life on it. So imagine that all your possessions so far, and if there was a bushfire, you could only go into your room to collect one of those things. What would you take away with you? What would you risk your life for? Sometimes it's something from your mum, which really reminds you of her, something she gave you. Could be some certificates of your achievements or photographs. Because sometimes what we own becomes our ego. I am a monk. I ordained 46 years ago. What else have I done? I was a scientist. I was this, I was that. It's one of the reasons why when people challenge who you think you are, you get angry. Or you hide the truth. You forgot, what the equations were in science. Or you make a mistake in what the Buddha said. Am I allowed to do that? To give the wrong reference, the wrong sutta quote? Can I be imperfect? Whether I can or not, I am. Sometimes you make mistakes. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have an ego, you'd never make mistakes. Even Socrates, he said this amazing thing once. He said, you can never think you're wrong. And because it was Socrates said that, I thought, well, that's interesting. Is that true? And if you contemplate that, it's absolutely true. You can never think you are wrong. In the moment, you always think you're right. It doesn't mean that you look at what you said earlier and say, well, that was wrong. But you're right about that you were wrong. And that actually just shows you the nature of this mind and this ego. And little by little, as you practice more and more, you tend not to want to own so much. Especially you don't want to own a reputation. That's one of the reasons, honestly, why you often see me trying to open the door for you rather than the other way around. Because it's dangerous. People are always opening the door for me and treating me like a king or an emperor of Jhana growth. Because then you start to feel entitled. You get upset when somebody doesn't open the door for you. That's sometimes why I like to wash the dishes. Just simple things. Why not? Because otherwise it's a big ego. Somebody should be washing my dishes. I shouldn't be doing it. So sometimes when you want to lessen your ego, you just want to be ordinary, simple. Do simple things. And in my position, that's very difficult. Because sometimes people treat you like royalty sometimes. Because I've met royalty. And some years ago, asked Ajahn Sujato, he was there at the time, that it was, I think, the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne. And so Queen Elizabeth came along. And so I got an invitation to actually to go to all these functions. There was a Commonwealth Day conference where I had to speak, and in front of the Queen. Well, you learn a lot, you see Queen Elizabeth. You know why she wears big hats, especially in church? Because I was sitting sort of in front, maybe as far as away from you. So imagine you were the Queen, Dorothea, and I was Ajahn Brahm. So she was sitting just not that far away in the front of the church. Was it St Andrew's Church or something in Sydney? Anyway, that during the bishop's speech, you could see her head go down. But you couldn't see her close her eyes. Because the hat was just, when it goes down so far, the brim of the hat sort of stops you seeing her eyes closed and having a bit of a nap. But you know, also that later afterwards he had this reception in Kirribilli House, as John Howard was the boss then. And just I was supposed to go, got the invitation, Ajahn Brahm and partner. Okay, get the full story of this. This was funny. Because when I first got the invitation here in sort of Jhana Monastery, got it in a nice envelope, and I thought, well, what's this invitation? It was to go to all these events in Sydney. And especially, you had to have dress code. But anyway, just at Kirribilli House, there was not really a dress code, so we went in there. And it gets a bit boring after a while. And that's when I took Ajahn Sujato, he was my companion. So he got a ticket in as well. So, I think it was Prince Philip and the Queen, and who else was there? Anyway, they were the centre of attention, so after doing the handshaking and stuff, with Ajahn Sujato, then he didn't know what to do next. So let's go and speak to this guy. There's one fellow, no one was talking to him. And so I went up to him with Ajahn Sujato and just said, oh, no, we're Buddhist monks. Oh, yeah, very good. And he said, you're losing a bit of hair. If you lose any more hair, you can become a monk like us. Ha, 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 ha. And then Ajahn Sujato, we went away. And I said, who was that? And I said, oh, that was Prince Edward. He said, you can't say that. Not a prince. So why not? He's just a human being as well. I just started scolding me for that one. Then afterwards, of course, there was a state dinner in the government house in Canberra. We went to Canberra afterwards. And the state dinner there, that was where you had the dress code. And that was funny because I had three choices. So I looked at the dress code. The first choice was the black tie. Now remember, I've been a monk for many years, and said a black tie. And I asked the other monks and lay people, because I don't know if the monks knew, what does that mean, a black tie? Is that all they wear in the state dinner, just a black tie? No trousers. That's what it said there, black tie. And they said, no, it's code. It means a jacket and suit and nice. I said, I haven't got any of those things. So I thought I was in trouble. I might not be able to go. The second choice was a military uniform. A Buddhist monk, a pacifist, you can't get a military uniform, not even in one of those fancy dress shops, when you go to fancy dress parties. I can't do that. And I looked at the third option, and I smiled. Yes, I can go. Long dress. But that was really good fun. So it was boring, but I went in anyway. And honestly, I was stopped by security. And they said, "Are you meant to be in here, sir?" I didn't look the part. But then I got the invitation, here you go. So they had to let me through. And so one of the nice things was that they really did their research for that event. And so obviously it was in the evening, and they had a dinner, like a salad and I think macadamia pie or something, and some nice sort of ice cream afterwards. But anyway, I couldn't eat any of that. You know what they gave me? For the first course, the entree, it was like Australian cheddar cheese or something, and then another type of cheese for my second course. And the third course was chocolate. That's true, that's what they gave me. They really did their research, so I was really impressed. But it was really nice cheese. I mean, this was at a function of Queen Elizabeth, so it's just really the best cheese. And we were talking, they wanted to take the cheese away, and I said, "Hey, can I have it a bit longer?" But anyway, this is good fun. I don't know why I'm talking like that. Anyway, because over time, anyway. That wasn't the question. Well, did the question come up? Oh, subduing the ego. But one thing I was really disappointed at, though, because, like all these functions, you have to go to the toilet. And so I went to the men's toilet. And in the men's toilet, you just, in the urinals, you just stand next to people. And so I was standing next to, that's right, Lachlan Murdoch. He's really wealthy. That's Rupert Murdoch's son. He was at this stuff as well. And I was just really kidding myself. I didn't have a donation envelope to hand to him. What a chance missed. Never mind. Anyway, just a human being. Anyway, let's finish off and go sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. Hope you enjoyed that. Oh my goodness. Was this all recorded? Can I edit it, please? No, it's